Hello there everyone, welcome to the channel. If you're new, welcome back if you aren't. I'm EDJ, and I'm continuing with Epic History TV's series on Napoleon. So last video we saw was the blunder in Spain, and that video kind of ended with Napoleon leaving Spain because Austria has now mobilized for war. And this is, I believe, the 4-month I'm pretty sure it was the 4-month battle in which Napoleon warred with Austria for 4 months. And I think what's very telling is that Napoleon, he defeated them really quick, 4 months, but that Austria actually put up quite a fight. I don't know the specifics. I mainly only know this part, mainly because the oversimplified video, that quick little explanation. So that's really it. The details of how Austria performs, I have yet to fully, learn. So that's what I'm watching this video for. So I don't really have much else to say other than, yes, Austria's added once again. I'm refraining from making a joke that this being Austria's 1 billionth time of fighting Napoleon, but yeah, I guess we'll just see, So, if you want to watch this video without me talking or pausing, the link to this video will be down in the description down below. And that's about it. Without any further ado, let's just get right into it. Let's watch Napoleon oh, wait, what the? Wait, I just barely am looking at the title. Wow, really? Austria? Dang. I thought Napoleon just swept them. I thought they put up quite a fight, but that he essentially beat them really quick, which he did. But I didn't know Napoleon lost the battle. Dang, like that's a rare thing. Okay, let's just get into it. Let's see how Austria performs.
An Epic History TV History March collaboration, supported by our sponsor, Osprey Publishing. In 1809, France, under Napoleon Bonaparte, was the most powerful nation in Europe. But the French Emperor's invasion of Spain and Portugal the previous year had failed to deliver the easy victory he'd expected. And with many of Napoleon's best troops and commanders now tied down in Spain, an old enemy prepared to challenge France once more.
The court of Vienna is behaving very badly. It may have cause to repent. Oh, snap. Okay, yeah, just reading that quote, I get an impression that Napoleon's pissed. And quite frankly, yeah, I feel like Austria has been, behind Britain, probably Napoleon's most steadfast nemesis. So, yeah, Napoleon's probably gonna let out some rage in this one.
Austria had been preparing for war with France since her last humiliating defeat at Austerlitz in 1805.
I keep mentioning this on and off, but Napoleon's biggest problem is that he could never secure... wait, sorry, this light. So yeah, Napoleon could never secure lasting peace. Like, I think the biggest critique, yeah, we've gone to the point of the series where I might start critiquing Napoleon a bit, or calling him out on, his mistakes, obviously, but I feel like Napoleon's biggest issue is that he never truly defeated his enemies. Now, just hear me out on this. Yes, Napoleon won the coalition wars. He had these brilliant successes in battles and tactics, he did really great, but the thing is, he never defeated his enemy. He never got rid of the threat, is what I'm saying. It always stood there. Even these wars that he won, like the coalition wars, he technically didn't beat them. Like, sure, they sued for peace and they had peace, but it didn't feel like real peace. It felt more like they were just biding their time. It's more like a ceasefire is all I'm saying. His victories more feel like ceasefires, so his enemies can rebuild strength and continue fighting again. Because we see this with Austria in particular. Like, yes, he defeats them, but they sue for peace for a bit, but they just rebuild their strength, and it's like, alright, we're back, like, nothing ever happened, like, that peace didn't mean anything. I think Napoleon never truly defeated his enemies. He never got rid of the threat of his enemies, and eventually they just kept fighting and fighting him until he could no longer fight. And I'll give it to Britain and the rest of Europe. They actually did what Napoleon couldn't. They got rid of their threat. The moment Napoleon is defeated, they forced him to abdicate. They put his butt on an island. And even though he escaped from that island, they didn't make the same mistake twice. They put him on an even further island, and he was guarded until his death. Like, yeah, they knew how to get rid of their enemy. Napoleon never did. He never truly defeated them. It kind of reminds me of like Hannibal Barca. Yes, Hannibal won these great successes against Rome, but Rome never gave up. Like, you know, like Europe never gave up against Napoleon, and you know, like I don't know how he could have gotten rid of the threat, like how he could have made a lasting peace. That I don't have a solution to that. But yeah, at least with Austria in particular, he probably should have been more like, yeah, he needed to find a way to get rid of the threat. Whether that means forcing Francis to abdicate, or completely crippling Austria, or any other way, I don't know. Like I said, I guess those are two ideas, but yeah, they'll always be there to fight him. And yeah, Napoleon's issue, in my opinion, is that he never truly defeated his enemies. They remained his enemies until his dying days, and he never found a way to fully get rid of them or subdue them. So, yeah, I guess that's my biggest critique of Napoleon. And yeah.
Since her last humiliating defeat at Austerlitz in 1805. Now, with Napoleon busy in Spain, and a British promise of cash subsidies, plus a supporting attack in Northern Europe, it looked like the ideal time to strike. This time, Austria's armies would be led by Archduke Charles, Emperor Francis's younger brother. At 37, he was 2 years younger than Napoleon, but already had 15 years' experience of high command. And he was learning from past defeats. He'd begun to reform the Austrian army along French lines.
Yeah, Napoleon, that's another thing. Like, I'm pretty sure this is a Napoleon quote. He essentially said if you fight the same enemies, they'll eventually learn from you. And I feel like that was something Napoleon, like the inability to have peace with his enemies, or to sustain a peace, whether that means completely crippling his enemies or finding a diplomatic solution. Essentially, like, yeah, they learned from him. Since he couldn't find a way to stop them or end them, yeah, they just learned from him, and they got better at fighting. Like, I'm pretty sure they even adopted the core system that he was using, you know? And it's like, it just came a point where it's like, no, all Napoleon did was, it felt more like delay the inevitable defeat, like, you know, that he would have to have. And yeah, Austria learned. Like, I know I've been making fun of Austria, like, you know, the past videos, like, Austria declaring war for the 1 billionth time, Austria, Napoleon's punching bag, but, you know what? I mean that as a joke, in case anyone's, like, offended. It's like, oh, Edwin, how dare you make fun of Austria? Like, they're actually really great, you, like, you know? No one's ever been that mean. I'm just being over, like, I'm just being, I forgot the word, but point is, I'm exaggerating, but, you know, point is, like, I'm gonna be objective and actually talk how I actually feel, and just say, yeah, Austria adapted, and yeah, I know in this, like, 4-month war, they actually gave Napoleon hell and apparently defeated him, so, you know what, I'm gonna give Austria its praise. They had that perseverance to not quit, you know, which is, it paid off at the end in a way.
Copying Napoleon's core system and introducing new infantry tactics.
Okay, I was right. Copied the core system. Makes sense, why wouldn't you? Napoleonic infantry tactics, a quick guide.
In the Napoleonic Wars, infantry fought in close order, packed together, standing shoulder to shoulder. But why present such an easy target for the enemy? First, command and control. Before radios, orders had to be relayed by shouted commands, drums or bugles. Difficult enough in the smoke and din of battle. Almost impossible if troops were scattered. Second, firepower. Smoothbore muskets were inaccurate beyond about 80 yards, so volley fire, firing en masse, was the best way to inflict physical and psychological damage on the enemy. Third, morale. Soldiers were much more willing to advance into danger or hold the line if they did so together as a unit, urging each other on. Fourth, defense against cavalry. Scattered infantry were easy targets for horsemen. Only by sticking together could they fight them off. The basic tactical unit of infantry was the battalion. A French line battalion had, in theory, 840 men, but in practice, nearer 500 to 600. Our example here has 605 men, a typical strength for a battalion on campaign. The men were divided into 6 companies, 4 fusilier companies, and 2 flank companies. On the right, the grenadiers, made up of the tallest, strongest men, often detached to form elite all-grenadier units. And on the left, the voltigeurs, specialist light infantry used for skirmishing in front of the battalion. Skirmishers moved independently, used cover, and fired at will to harass and unsettle the enemy, while preventing enemy skirmishers carrying out the same task. Most armies also had specialist light infantry units for this role, such as the British 95th Rifles, French Chasseurs à Pied, and Austrian and Prussian Jaeger battalions. The traditional battlefield formation was the line, all companies formed up alongside each other, 3 ranks deep. Line formation maximized the number of men who could fire their muskets at the enemy, and limited casualties from artillery fire. But it was extremely vulnerable to cavalry if it could be outflanked. And even for well-drilled troops, it was difficult to keep the line straight while advancing across broken ground. So for maneuver and attack, battalions usually formed a column of divisions. This was a more flexible formation that allowed the battalion to advance quickly, though it presented a larger target to enemy guns, firing solid round shot that would tear through several ranks, and far fewer men could fire their muskets at the enemy. Theoretically, therefore, the battalion would deploy into line before reaching the enemy. But carrying out this slow maneuver under fire wasn't always possible or sensible. So some commanders kept their men in column, relying on momentum to break the enemy line. This was a risky tactic that often worked against raw troops, but led to high casualties when facing better trained infantry, like British redcoats. A column could be closed up quickly to provide protection from cavalry, or if there was time, could form a square. With bayonets fixed, the battalion formed an all-round defence that often resembled more of a rectangle. Enemy cavalry could surround the battalion, but not break in, as horses won't charge a solid wall of men and steel. But an infantry square was extremely vulnerable to artillery fire, and could only move very slowly. Changing quickly and smoothly from one formation to another, especially under fire, required training, practice, and experience. In 1809, the Austrian army began to use the battalion mass formation, crude but more suited to hastily trained conscripts. This was a dense column with limited firepower and huge vulnerability to enemy cannon. But it could quickly close up to repel cavalry using the same principle as the square, but without the complex drill, and was much more maneuverable. Napoleon, warned by his spies that Austria was
Let me get that again, I'm sorry.
and was much more maneuverable. But without the complex drill, and was much more maneuverable.
Ah, I see. Okay. Let me get that one more time.
Mechanic column with limited fire.
Sorry. I'm like interested in this. Like, Austria had found a way to kind of make a square without essentially going through the hassle, and that's
Power. And
I feel like this is gonna be finally the video where I give Austria praise. Maybe so anyone huge fans of Austria is like, finally, he's not making fun of Austria anymore. But
huge vulnerability to enemy cannon. But it could quickly close up to repel cavalry using
the idea is like Napoleon relied heavily on cavalry, but Napoleon also was very big on artillery, which I believe he would often use artillery to break square formations or any defense, and once broken, that would allow his cavalry to swoop in. I know that. I believe it was the Battle of Waterloo that Napoleon couldn't do that, mainly because of the mud and the bad conditions, so Wellington, could remain in the square formation, and Napoleon's cavalry, led by Ney, I believe, was kind of, like, decimated. So, yeah. But here, they found a really effective way. And yeah, Austria out here being innovative, that's, wow.
Same principle as the square, but without the complex drill. It was much more maneuverable. Napoleon, warned by his spies that Austria was preparing for war, left Spain and raced back to Paris, arriving on the 24th of January 1809. The French army in Germany, commanded by Marshal Berthier, would need urgent reinforcement. So Napoleon summoned units from Spain, called up young conscripts, and soldiers from his German allies in the Confederation of the Rhine. La Grande Armée was no longer the finely honed instrument of 1805, but with Napoleon at its head, it was still a formidable force.
Yeah, the Grand Armée, I think it peaked in terms of, like, skill and just, like, all overall performance. The War of the Third Coalition was, like, it at its best. And Napoleon, through the constant warring, lost so much people. But it is a testament that despite the Grand Armée, I like saying it like that, but when I'm by myself, I'm like, the Grand Armée. But, I think it's a testament to Napoleon's leadership that even when his force, his, like, army was no longer at its best, that they still were winning so many battles, even with, like, fresh teenage conscripts, like, Napoleon was still, like, winning. I just think about, like, the 6 Days campaign, my favorite Napoleon campaign. Like, Napoleon was still implementing so much, like, genius through constant victories, despite, his army being a shadow of what it once was. And I think that just shows his, like, tactical brilliance, like, just overall, gotta give it to Napoleon, man. It's hard not to praise the man.
Archduke Charles ordered diversionary attacks in Poland and northern Italy, but launched his main attack against France's ally, Bavaria, on the 10th of April. It came a week earlier than Napoleon had expected and caught the French Emperor by surprise. Charles was relying on a rapid advance, but a last-minute change of plans, torrential rain, and a slow-moving baggage train slowed progress to a crawl.
It's always the weather, man.
Marshal Berthier was a brilliant chief of staff to Napoleon, but an indecisive field commander. His forces were too widely dispersed, and Marshal Davout's Third Corps was dangerously isolated at Regensburg.
Oh, dang.
Charles ordered his corps to converge and destroy it. But on the 17th of April, Napoleon arrived at Donauwörth to take over command. He immediately ordered Davout to withdraw from his exposed position. It was too late for him to escape without a fight. Davout's Third Corps was one of the best in the Grande Armée, and in a fast-moving battle across wooded hills, the heroes of Auerstadt threw back the Austrians. Despite the heroism of General Major Liechtenstein, badly wounded, leading his troops forward. Third Corps escaped the encirclement.
Davout, best of the marshals. Just amazing. I love Davout. I think he's the best of the marshals. He's also my favorite, so I'm always happy to see Third Corps.
The Battle of Teugn-Hausen was the start of Napoleon's so-called four-day campaign. First, he used Marshal Lefebvre's Bavarian 7th Corps and a provisional corps under Marshal Lannes to drive a wedge into the Austrian army. Then he pursued its left wing towards Landshut, believing he was following the main Austrian army. French troops and their German allies stormed the town's bridge to win a hard-fought victory. But Napoleon realized that Archduke Charles was not at Landshut, and that, once again, he'd left Marshal Davout to face the main enemy force. Sending Marshal Bessières in pursuit of the Austrian
Davout always gets alone fighting the main force, huh? This seems to be a trend, Oh man.
left wing, Napoleon swung north, falling on the Austrian 4th Corps at Eckmühl. The French and their German allies won their 4th victory in as many days. But Charles's main force was still intact, and hoping to keep it so, he ordered a rapid retreat across the Danube.
So yeah, this Charles guy, apparently really, they're brother of, the Emperor Francis. Yeah, so far it seems like he's not performing that well, though we'll see if it changes. So far it seems like he's getting his butt kicked by Napoleon.
The French pursued, storming the walled city of Regensburg, which they knew as Ratisbon, with its vital stone bridge. Napoleon put Marshal Lannes in charge of the assault. When the attack faltered, Lannes threatened to lead the next charge in person, and his men, suitably chastised, took the city. During the siege, Napoleon was hit in the foot by a spent bullet, causing widespread alarm, but it proved to be a superficial wound. Stubborn Austrian resistance had allowed Archduke Charles and his army to escape across the Danube. Napoleon had cut the Austrian army in half, but both sections now retreated in good order towards Vienna. Napoleon led his forces in pursuit, detaching Lefebvre's Bavarian Corps to deal with a popular revolt in Tyrol, and Third Corps and the Württemberg 8th Corps to guard his line of communications. Charles chose not to defend the capital, which surrendered on the 13th of May after a short bombardment. Instead, Charles and the Austrian army lay in wait across the Danube. Napoleon was now down to 80,000 men, facing 110,000 Austrians. Charles's army had fought bravely and well throughout the campaign, but Napoleon still had a low opinion of Austrian troops and decided to attack.
What's up?
Hi, Jira. We brought you here.
To cannon, all men are equal. Not wrong there, Napoleon.
On the night of the 20th of May, French engineers hastily built a series of floating bridges between the river islands of the Danube, and French troops began to cross. By noon the next day,
Hmm. I mentioned in the Battle of Friedland video that usually having your back to the river isn't a good idea, because if you need to retreat, things get bad. It seems like, obviously Napoleon needs to cross to fight him, but yeah, it doesn't... Seems a bit iffy there.
Napoleon had most of Massena's 4th Corps and his cavalry across the river, about 24,000 men and 40 guns, holding the villages of Aspern and Essling. Napoleon expected the Austrians to retreat once more, and that he'd only face a rear guard. But reports soon arrived that the entire Austrian army was advancing against him in 5 attack columns, 90,000 men and 300 cannon. The situation got even worse. The Austrians began to float heavy barges and obstacles downriver to smash through the flimsy French bridge. Each time, Napoleon's only supply route was cut off for several hours, causing critical delays to the arrival of reinforcements and ammunition.
Okay, that's genius. Okay, I talked bad about Charles a bit too early. Mainly because of the title Napoleon Defeated, I'm going to assume that he defeats Napoleon. And I can see why. Like I said, having your back to the river is I'm sure there are battles where it works, but most battles I hear about that never work out when the river's behind you, as we saw in Friedland. I went into, like, detail in the Friedland video if you want to watch that again. But, yeah, it seems like Napoleon, there's only one way there, and they're constantly breaking it, so leaving the rest of his reinforcements while Napoleon is kind of stuck on the upper side here, and they're just gonna pressure him. Okay. Alright, Charles chose the best time to attack. I have to give him his due, that the man chose the best time.
The battle began around 2:45 p.m. as infantry of the Austrian 1st Column attacked Aspern. The village was soon under attack from 3 sides. General Molitor's French garrison clung on desperately, fighting hand-to-hand in the streets and suffering 50% casualties.
Dang.
To support the defenders of Aspern, Napoleon ordered cavalry to charge the Austrian 3rd Column. But they could not break through the Austrian infantry, closed up in their battalion mass formation. At 6 p.m.,
Yeah, the opening, what he just said of the video with the tactics, like, yeah, it's coming back now, and they're even repelling Napoleon's cavalry. Dang, Charles. Good on you.
Duke Charles ordered General Bellegarde's 2nd Column to take Aspern at any cost. Charles himself rode among the front ranks, urging the men forward. In ferocious fighting, the Austrians took the village.
Yeah, this seems like a really bad situation at the moment.
Napoleon immediately sent in newly arrived reinforcements to recapture it. About the same time, the Austrian 4th Column began its attack on the village of Essling, where Marshal Lannes had taken charge of defences while he waited for his own corps to cross the Danube. The first Austrian assault was repulsed. The veteran French cavalry commander General d'Espagne led his cuirassiers in pursuit, but was hit by grape shot and died of his wounds.
Ouch, man.
Around 9 p.m, the Austrian 5th Column finally arrived in position and made its first attack against Essling, which was thrown back by Lannes' troops. As night fell, firing died out across the battlefield, and men got what rest they could among the dead and the wounded.
Day 2.
Overnight, Second Corps and the Imperial Guard crossed the Danube to reinforce Napoleon's army, which now numbered 71,000 and 150 guns. But then the bridge broke again, leaving Davout's Third Corps still waiting to cross. Nevertheless, Napoleon decided to attack, using Second Corps to break the Austrian centre. But first, Aspern would have to be retaken. Heavy fighting broke out in the village before dawn. By 7 AM, it was back in French hands.
Yeah, they were playing
At
tug of war
Essling,
with
fresh
Aspern.
Austrian attacks were fought off by General Lasalle's cavalry and units of the Young Guard. With both flanks secure, Napoleon launched his main attack in the centre with Lannes' Second Corps. Austrian guns poured fire into the advancing French ranks. General Saint-Hilaire, leading the attack, a hero of Austerlitz and Jena, had his foot blown off, a wound that proved fatal.
Yeah, I'd imagine, like, yeah, getting your foot... Oh, dude. Dang, this is so brutal. Like, man. We're getting to the point, yeah, I imagine Napoleonic Wars are about to get even more brutal. Because the thing is, Napoleon's enemies are learning from him. And they're getting better at fighting. You know, and so when your enemies are getting better, yeah, I imagine this is the point where the Napoleonic Wars are gonna get way more bloody, especially the Leipzig video. That's gonna be a bloodbath, but yeah, man.
Archduke Charles sent his Grenadier Reserve forward to strengthen the line. The French infantry, under torrential fire, began to fall back. At this critical moment, the French bridge over the Danube was broken again, halting the vital flow of reinforcements and ammunition to Napoleon's army.
Are Austria still doing that? Because the first time they mentioned they broke the bridge, but yeah, they keep doing that. That's really, like, that's smart, man. They keep, like, they already have Napoleon outnumbered, but they're just ensuring that he remains outnumbered by keeping the bridge and keeping, you know, the steady stream of reinforcements he'll need. That's... Dang, man. Austria. Good job, guys. Good job.
By 2 PM, the French had been driven out of Aspern once more. Heavy fighting continued in Essling, which was briefly captured by the Austrians, then retaken by the Young Guard. Napoleon knew his army could do no more. At 4 PM, he ordered his exhausted cavalry to make a last charge to keep the enemy at bay, then gave the order to retreat. Archduke Charles, whose own army had suffered huge losses and was low on ammunition, was content to watch the French withdraw to the island of Lobau.
Wow.
In the final moments of the battle, Marshal Lannes, one of Napoleon's finest commanders and closest friends, was hit by a cannonball that smashed both his legs.
Oh my gosh.
He died of his wounds a week later.
Oh, not Lannes. Oh, not Lannes. Oh my gosh. Oh, not Lannes. That's a heavy blow. Lannes has been around since, like, the beginning, man. Oh, that sucks. Dang. By the way, I have a list of the marshals that I've been keeping track of on my phone, like, to remember them, and I put kind of little descriptions next to each one of them. For instance, for Davout, I have Best Marshal, MVP, the Giga Chad. It's a little silly. I have Ney. I put Cavalry Charge at Waterloo, failed. I don't mean to be mean, just kind of, that's how the best I remember these marshals. One event in my head sticks out and I remember them by that. I don't mean to be mean to Ney. And, you know, I have, you know, Massena MVP of Italy, and Argero got decimated at Alao, like, you know what I mean? But for lands, I always had his description as Napoleon's friend. Like, that's the description I gave him, because, like, that's kind of what I always seen about him. Like, you know, I feel like he didn't have a moment in this series, you know, like where Davu or, like, Masena, but, like, he's always remained completely there and competent, and so, you know, like, his description is Napoleon's friend, because that's, when learning about him, that's usually the thing a lot of people mention, is that he and Napoleon were good friends, like, and yeah, that's a devastating blow, not just to the army, but to Napoleon himself, like, wow, man. Okay. The time has come. I must give Austria its praise. Finally, after how many videos have we done in this series? Like 10? like over a dozen, or we're getting close to that. You know, I've made jokes about Austria, but here, man, I have to give it. You've learned a lot from your mistakes. Charles, in particular, who I didn't really know about until this video, genius, man. Not many people can claim to have defeated Napoleon alone. And he did it. Like, he got Napoleon to retreat, and that already makes him the best of the Austrians. Well, it might actually, Napoleon was defeated back in the Italian campaign, I remember that, but I'm gonna say Charles is the MVP of Austria. And yeah, one of the few people who can say they beat Napoleon, and he has reformed the army. He's used some of the same things that made Napoleon great, like the core system. We went over the more simplified square formation columns in the earlier thing, like, MVP of Austria, Charles, you're great, man. I think defeating Napoleon in battle automatically makes one a genius. Like, that is... And not only did he defeat Napoleon, he literally got rid of one of his best marshals, his friend. Like, talk about, like... Not only did he defeat Napoleon, like, not only did he lay, like, physical blows against Napoleon, but he laid, like, one of the most gut-wrenching emotional punches, like... Man, that's... Good job, Austria, man. Good job, Charles.
It was a deep blow to the Emperor.
What a loss for France and for me. Man, that sucks. I've become so emotionally invested in, like, man, this lamp sucks. This lamp is not working. I don't even know why I have it on. Okay, the point is, yeah, I've become invested a lot in these marshals that kind of been popping around. So yeah, just watching them, one of them dies. Kind of like when you're watching a TV show and your favorite character just kind of dies. Like, that's kind of, like, one of your favorite characters, like, that's how it feels like right now. Like, man, we lost a good one, guys. That's not gonna be easy to get up
The
from.
two-day Battle of Aspern-Essling was Napoleon's first major defeat, caused by his overconfidence and hasty planning. Both sides suffered heavy losses, and Napoleon avoided a much greater disaster only because of the exhaustion of the Austrian army. The French...
Yeah, like, good thing the French fought as well as they did, because Charles was unable to capitalize on his success. Like, imagine he could, how far he could have driven Napoleon back, assuming that the bridges were still, you know, broken, and he somehow managed to push him further. That could have been a disaster. You know, thank goodness that they at least gave Charles a good fight. But yeah.
The Emperor had learned new respect for the Austrians. Under Archduke Charles, they had fought bravely, with greater confidence, organization, and leadership.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat as you, Napoleon. Not respect. Gotta put respect on Austria's name now. I didn't think this time would come, but, you know, I'm joking, but yeah, just good on Charles mainly. Like, this This guy's the MVP of Austria right now.
Within days of his defeat, Napoleon had summoned reinforcements to join him on the Danube, and begun planning his revenge. If you'd like to learn more about...
So yeah, that's all I gotta say, guys. Good on Charles. It's finally time I gave Austria its flowers. Good job, Austria. Great job, Charles. And poor lands. poor lands. That was a gut-wrenching blow. Like, that was a gut-wrenching blow, man. But Napoleon, apparently the next video is his revenge, so, you know, Napoleon will avenge lands, and we'll all cheer for him for that. I'll see you guys then. Bye, everyone.